Hi there, I'm going to continue my series for the 50th anniversary of Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And here is something I want to read from Chapter 2. Now, Chapter 2 is really short, so I'm really going to comment on one section, obviously the most important section. So there's this section where he is talking about how motorcycle maintenance mechanics, commercial mechanics, care about the work they do, and that he notices that there's these happy-go-lucky mechanics who are very friendly but don't seem to really be getting involved in the work and have the radio on and are shooting the shit with each other. And we know the type, right? They're not they're not concentrating on what they're doing. They're not great craftsmen. So let me read this section. So he goes on to that, and this is the last part of that section. Not only did these mechanics not find that sheared pin, and this is, of course, that section where he can't get his motorcycle fixed to save his life, and the advice finally at the end is, well, just don't ride it very fast, okay? Really shitty mechanics. Not only did these mechanics not find that sheared pin, but it was clearly a mechanic who had sheared it in the first place by assembling the side cover plate improperly. I remember the previous owner had said a mechanic had told him the plate was hard to get on. That's why. The shop manual had warned about this, but like the others, he probably was in too much of a hurry or didn't care, and maybe didn't even, maybe skim the shop manual. Who knows how they even learned how to do this? They probably, watched someone once or twice, and so you're talking about not very good mechanics. Okay, so he goes on. While at work, I was thinking about this same lack of care in the digital computer manuals I was editing. Writing and editing technical manuals is what I do for a living and for the other 11 months of the year. And I knew they were full of errors, ambiguities, omissions, and information so completely screwed up, you had to read them 6 times to make any sense out of them. Okay, but they're still technically finished, right? You can't really, you have to go on some kind of archaeological dig to actually get your information, but technically the thing has all the information in there. You can't say it doesn't, but it's so poorly written that you kind of have to be a detective to finally get to it. So let's just, use that, like glom onto that word I just used, poor, they're poor. But what struck me for the first time was the agreement of these manuals, with the spectator attitude I had seen in the shop. These were spectator manuals. It was built into the format of them. Implicit in every line is the idea that here is the machine isolated in time and space from everything else in the universe. It has no relationship to you, and you have no relationship to it, other than to turn certain switches. Now, listen to this. Other than to turn certain switches, maintain voltage levels, check for error conditions, and so on. So when you're learning something manualized, that's what they're going to say. It has nothing to do, you can memorize these procedures, but memorizing them and then actually doing them in the context of what you need to do it in is a very different thing. And so on. That's it. The mechanics and their attitude toward the machine were really taking no different attitude from the manuals toward the machine. And from the attitude I had when I brought it in here. We were all spectators. And it occurred to me that there is no manual that deals with the real business of motorcycle maintenance, the most important aspect of it of all. Caring about what you are doing is considered either unimportant or taken for granted. That's an interesting phrase, that little end part. Considered unimportant. Like when you go to mechanic school or any kind of school, they're assuming you're going there because you want to. So there are going to be certain people who really care about it. But they don't emphasize that. They don't say, okay, this particular craft is something that if you don't care about it, you're not going to be able to do well. That's very true. That's not something you hear when you go to class. There's this sort of tacit understanding that you're there for a reason. But often that reason is because you have heard that this is some kind of profession you can make some pretty good money in, right? All right, so there's some other things that this paragraph brings up for me. In Lila, Persic will introduce the social level of value. And one element of this social value is one's social identity. And there's a mistake people make when they look at their jobs strictly on the level of social identity. This means being satisfied with a role in society and an income. You fulfilled that particular expectation, societal expectation of you. You're a mechanic, you make whatever, probably $70,000 a year these days. And that's good enough. So you can rely on that, you fit in, but you're not thinking, oh, this is what I love to do, because the majority of people aren't. Let me get to that in a minute. And this means that understanding within that role, any role, there's the potential to be superb at what you do. But you can also say, if you twist the wrench this way and solve some problems well enough, or you're some other type of technician, when to turn the switch on and off, like he was saying, or maybe nowadays fix some problem in IT, you call up IT and they can fix something and it works for a while and then it doesn't. So they're like, oh God, I got to take care of this. So they do what they have to take care of the problem right away, but not in the long run, right? And you've technically satisfied the parameters of the job description without having a major understanding of craftsmanship and the long-term effects of the greater good of what you're doing. Like I said, the primary motivation is stability and your salary, which is presumably is going to go up with inflation or CPI, whatever. Neil Gaiman once said, I don't know if he came up with this, but he once said that in a job you can be likable, you can be on time, and you can be good at what you do. But you only need to fulfill 2 of these 3 requirements to be considered a good employee. So you can be likable and on time and not very good at what you do and still keep your job. You might have heard Jordan Peterson talk about the Pareto principle, and that's that 10% of any given profession does 90% of the work. Peterson, who's very keen on IQ, a little bit too much, I think, attributes this to IQ and conscientiousness. Now, conscientiousness, conscientiousness and care do actually go hand in hand. So I understand the IQ part. I understand you have to be smart enough to do whatever job you need to do, but you don't have to have a stratospheric IQ to be a great craftsperson. But you do have to have conscientiousness, and conscientiousness and care are, I think, very related. But conscientiousness can be misdirected to something of low quality. Like you can be sort of really anal and conscientious about organizing all your tools and then pretty bad at using them. So quality is really the factor in being very good, and note the word good, at something. There are a lot of reasons that being good at what you do is not valued anymore. In our modern society, 2 factors predominate: efficiency and profit. We all love craftsmanship in the abstract, but most of us now are pretty happy with something just because it's cheap and it does the job. If it falls apart, we just get a new one because efficiency. Amazon is a perfect example. We live in this world of Amazon where all this crap, it looks nice. Later on in ZAMM, is in the motorcycle maintenance, person is going to talk about style over substance, right? Like things can look good, but they aren't actually good. So we get some fancy things, they fall apart, they do their job for a little while and then they fall apart, and then we order another one because it's cheap. And that kind of sums up what we're talking about, that Amazon and this way of thinking is the ultimate expression of efficient or reasonable, but not any good. Think of the replication crisis in science. Are science thrilled to falsify their hypotheses because that gives them better insight into the truth of what they're trying to discover, and presumably, let's just say we think scientists are going into it because they want the best, most enduring, most flexible truth. and they're willing to fall, they're willing to be happy when their hypotheses fall apart, because that means that they're, that you can at least eliminate that and move on to something else, and you're further along in the pursuit of truth. But these days, are they trying to make sure to prove their hypotheses so they can get some kind of social cred and mostly grants? So efficiency, getting that money, right? This paragraph gets to the gist of what technology has given us again: efficiency, profit, and a loss of meaning of the good, of quality, efficiency over quality. And of course, as I keep saying, I believe this, money is a symbolic representation of efficiency. Okay, so this is where he ends. I just love this because this is chapter 2 and he's setting us up. On this trip, I think we should notice it, explore it a little, to see if in that strange separation of what man is from what man does, we may have some clues as to what the hell has gone wrong in the 20th century, 21st century now, even worse. I don't want to hurry it. Hurry meaning, again, he's using that word efficiency. That in itself is a poisonous 20th century attitude. If you want to hurry something, that means you no longer care about it, or you just want to get on to other things. I just want to get at it slowly but carefully and thoroughly, with the same attitude I remember was present just before I found that sheared pin. It was the attitude that found it, nothing else. So I really love the way this is setting us up. I can see this, how much of this can we see in ourselves, that we not all of you, some of you are in that 10%, but a lot of us hurry through things and say, okay, it's done, and check the box. So checking the box is exactly the attitude he's talking about here, but not caring about the goddamn box at all and getting into it and doing the best you can and enjoying that goodness that comes out of it, that even goes beyond the manual in the box. That, I think, is what he's trying to talk about. So I hope that makes sense, and I will see you next time.